Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
Recent events at my workplace have left me both frustrated and oddly satisfied. Let me tell you what happened, how I got here. I work for a large company handling complaints. Not the basic "my order was wrong" type, but the serious ones that get sent to managers, public relations, and sometimes even our legal team. These are the complaints that could hurt the company's reputation or result in legal action if handled badly. Our daily requirement is to handle 40 cases each. Some of my colleagues struggle with this target, barely making 35 to 38 cases per day. But for me, I've handled 50 to 55 cases daily for the past 2 years. There's no bonus for doing extra, no recognition, not even a simple thank you. I just did it because I felt loyal to the company and figured I might as well be productive if I had the time and ability. These complaints can be unpredictable. Some take 5 minutes to solve, a quick apology email, or processing a refund. Others might need a 2-hour video call with our legal team in New York to talk about potential legal issues. You never know what you'll get when you open a new case. The one day I failed. Last month I woke up feeling awful. I had a headache, fever, and could barely keep my eyes open, but I dragged myself to work anyway, thinking I could push through it. That day I got nothing but complex cases. Every complaint needed lots of research, multiple calls, and careful notes. By the end of my shift, I'd done 39 cases, just one short of the daily requirement. I didn't think much of it. My weekly average was still well above 50 cases per day. And everyone has bad days, right? The next day I felt better and went back to my usual high numbers, handling 54 cases. The emergency meeting. The following Monday, I got an email from my manager asking for a meeting that afternoon at 4 p.m. The email said I needed to be there without fail. When I walked into the meeting room, my manager was sitting there with a folder. My manager told me I was called in because they needed to talk about my work from last week. When I asked if there was a problem, my manager said I had missed my daily requirement last Thursday by only doing 39 cases. I thought this was a joke at first. I pointed out that my weekly average was still over 50 cases per day and reminded them that I had been sick. My manager said the daily requirement was 40. This was standard practice, and there were no exceptions. When I asked if they looked at weekly or monthly numbers instead, mentioning that I've been handling over 50 cases almost every day for 2 years, my manager just said policy was policy. They told me I would need to go to a 3-day workshop on meeting performance requirements, the Underperformers Workshop. The workshop was scheduled after work hours for 3 days, so I had to drive across town during rush hour just to attend. When I got there, I was sitting with colleagues who really struggled with their workload, people who only handled 20 to 30 cases daily. The human resources person leading the session had clearly never handled a customer complaint in real life. She said the key to handling more cases was time management and suggested we try using the Pomodoro technique. When I tried to explain that some cases were just more complex and needed more time, she cut me off and suggested we all set goals. The HR person then asked everyone to share what they would do to reach the 40. When my turn came, I had to stand up and talk about how I would improve. I felt ridiculous explaining how I would try to reach 40 when I regularly handled 50 plus cases. I said I would focus more on meeting the daily requirement of exactly 40 cases. The HR person said my commitment to meeting expectations was what they wanted to see. By the time the 3-day workshop ended, I had lost hours of my personal time and was angry. Not because the workshop was hard, but because it was pointless for someone in my position. My malicious compliance. After the workshop, I thought hard about my situation. The company had wasted my time because of one bad day in 2 years of doing extra work. They didn't value my extra effort or even notice it. All they cared about was that I missed one case on one day, so I decided to give them exactly what they wanted. 40 cases per day. Not 41, not 39, exactly 40. The next day I went to work, handled exactly 40 cases, and then did nothing for the rest of my shift. I browsed the internet, organized my desk, and read articles online. The day after that I did the same thing. And the day after that. After about 2 weeks of this new approach, my manager called me in for another meeting. They noticed a change in my work lately and asked if everything was okay. I asked if I was underperforming. My manager admitted I was meeting my daily requirement of 40 cases but seemed worried. I told them I had been focusing on meeting the exact requirements since that workshop and asked if there was a problem with my work. My manager admitted there wasn't a problem. I said I was glad to hear I was meeting expectations, ending the conversation. This talk has happened several times over the past few months. Each time my manager tries to get me to go back to my old productivity levels, and each time I just ask if I'm meeting requirements. The conversation always ends the same way, with my manager unable to criticize me because I'm doing exactly what's required. The backlog of cases has been growing since I stopped doing extra. Cases that I would have handled now wait longer, causing more customer frustration and more complaints. Just before Easter, the company posted job listings for 2 new manager positions in our department. They now need more people to handle the workload that I used to cover by myself. They're going to pay 2 extra salaries just because they couldn't appreciate one worker who went above and beyond. I find satisfaction knowing their rigid policies and lack of appreciation created this situation. I'm doing exactly what they ask for, no more, no less, and it's costing them far more than a simple thank you or some flexibility would have. I'm a single parent with twin 5-year-olds. We live in a small house with a backyard. Money's tight since their father left, but I try to give my kids a good childhood. With summer coming and hot weather, I bought a kiddie pool for my yard, just big enough for my twins to splash in. Our neighborhood is quiet, except for the woman next door. She moved in 6 months ago with her teenage son. From the start, there were problems. Her son is about 13 but acts entitled to everything. He throws trash in people's yards, plays loud music at night, and once tried to take my kids' bikes. The mother defends him, saying he's just being a boy and everyone else is too sensitive. Last Saturday was hot, so I set up the pool early. My twins were excited, splashing and laughing. We were having fun until I went inside to get sunscreen. When I came back, I saw the neighbor at our fence with her son. I heard her tell her son we had a pool and wouldn't let him use it. She called it discrimination. Her son said it was for little kids and he didn't want to use it. She told him he should cool off too and she would talk to me. I went outside with the sunscreen and asked if I could help. She demanded her son join my children in the pool because of the heat. Her teenage son was twice the size of my 5-year-olds and the pool was barely big enough for them. I told her the pool was for small children and wouldn't be safe with someone his size. She got angry. She said I thought her son wasn't good enough for my children and called it ridiculous. I explained it was about size and safety, but she wouldn't listen. She said I was selfish and if her son couldn't use the pool, no one should. She walked away, pulling her embarrassed son with her. I went back to my kids. An hour later, I went to make lunch. Looking out the window, I saw the neighbor in my yard carrying a small animal cage toward our pool. I saw it was full of rats she was about to dump in my children's pool. I grabbed my phone, called 911, and ran outside. I told the dispatcher a woman was trying to put rats in my kids' pool and asked them to send someone quickly. I kept recording with my phone as I went up to her. I asked what she was doing in my yard. She jumped, not expecting me. The cage shook in her hands. She said if her son couldn't enjoy the pool, no one would. She said they were her son's pet rats and they needed to cool off too. I told her to get out and said police were coming. I showed her I was recording. She demanded I give her the phone, saying I couldn't record her. She tried to grab my phone. I stepped back, keeping the camera on her. She didn't see the pool toys on the ground. Her foot hit a plastic bucket, and she fell face first on the grass. The cage flew from her hands and opened when it hit the ground. 6 or 7 rats ran out of the cage and went toward the closest hiding place, the neighbor on the ground. 2 ran up her pants, 1 went into her shirt collar, and others ran across the yard. She started screaming for help about rats in her clothes. She jumped up dancing, hitting at her clothes. She twisted around trying to shake the rats out, but they just went deeper. She fell again, rolled around, and screamed when she felt them moving on her skin. I told her to stay still because she was scaring the rats more, but she didn't listen. She kept dancing across my yard, screaming for help. My twins watched from the back door where I told them to stay. One asked why the mean lady was dancing with rats. I had no answer. The police came 5 minutes later. Two officers walked up confused by what they saw. One told her to calm down so they could help. She kept screaming about rats in her clothes and begged them to get them out. The officers looked at each other, then at me. I showed them my phone and explained. They spent 20 minutes helping remove rats from her clothes. One officer had to catch a rat in her hair. After all rats were back in the cage, the officers told her she was being arrested for trespassing and attempted property damage. They read her rights. She blamed me, saying I made her do it by being selfish with my pool. One officer asked if she brought rats to put in a children's pool because a 13-year-old couldn't play with 5-year-olds. She had no answer. They took her in handcuffs, with an officer carrying the rat cage to their car. Her son was called to get the rats later. We drained and cleaned the pool even though the rats never got in. My twins asked why someone would do that. I don't know how to explain entitled behavior to 5-year-olds. The neighbor faces charges and I filed for a restraining order. Her son stays with his father now, and the house next door is quiet. The image of her rat dance across my yard is something I'll never forget. My wife is a nice person. She'll chase you down to return something you dropped. Last month, she found a wallet with over $300 and drove 45 minutes to return it to the owner. She's always thinking of others, but everyone has limits. Yesterday started like any other Tuesday for my wife. She had taken the day off work to handle some appointments and errands that had been piling up. Our youngest had a doctor's appointment in the morning, which took longer than expected because they were short-staffed. Then she had to rush to get groceries because we were hosting my parents for dinner that night. She stopped at a Shell gas station after getting groceries. Her fuel light had been on for about 10 miles, and she needed gas because our kids had after-school activities later. The gas station was unusually busy for a weekday afternoon. She had to circle the lot twice before finding an open pump. She pulled up, parked, and started opening her door. Her door was halfway open when a luxury SUV drove into the gas station too fast and nearly hit her door. She had to pull it back quickly, almost losing her balance in the process. The door handle hit her wrist, leaving a small bruise that she showed me later. The woman driving the SUV, I'll call her Karen, glared at my wife like she did something wrong. My wife said her nostrils were flared, lips pursed, eyes narrowed. Karen was probably in her 40s, wearing large sunglasses pushed up on her head and talking on a Bluetooth earpiece the entire time. My wife told Karen she almost hit her door. Karen said my wife should be more careful about where she opens it because she had places to be. And then she mumbled something about people who don't know how to park, even though my wife was perfectly centered between the lines. My wife was surprised. This wasn't the first time someone had been rude to her in public, but usually people at least acknowledged when they nearly caused an accident. She watched Karen pull up to the pump across from her, get out of her car and start filling her tank. Karen kept tapping her foot and checking her watch. She also kept talking loudly on her earpiece about how someone named Tyler hadn't prepared properly for a meeting and how she would have to fix his mess again. After filling up, Karen closed the gas cap but left the nozzle in her tank. She walked into the gas station to pay or get snacks. Through the large windows, my wife saw her cutting in front of an elderly man in line and arguing with the cashier about some promotion that had expired last week. By then, my wife finished pumping gas and got back in her SUV. She watched as the elderly man Karen had cut off came out of the store looking frustrated. He looked at Karen's car with the pump still in it and shook his head before driving away. She noticed Karen left the nozzle in her tank and paused. Usually, she would tell someone about this mistake. Just last week, she had stopped a teenager from driving off with the gas cap sitting on top of his car. That's how she is. But something changed in her that day. She thought about how this woman almost caused an accident, was rude, and didn't apologize. She thought about how the woman acted like her time was more important than everyone's safety. She thought about the bruise forming on her wrist and the elderly man who Karen had disrespected inside. So my wife got into her SUV, took a breath, and waited. She sent me a quick text saying she might be a few minutes late getting home with the groceries. Karen came out of the gas station a minute later with her phone at her ear talking. She was carrying a coffee and what looked like lottery tickets, juggling them while still talking loudly into her earpiece. Without looking at her car or the pump, she opened her driver's door and got in. Two other customers at nearby pumps noticed the nozzle still in Karen's car. One of them actually raised his hand and opened his mouth, as if to say something, but then lowered it again after seeing my wife's face through her window. My wife wondered if she should say something. She watched Karen start her engine, still talking on her earpiece. Then she decided no, she wouldn't. Karen hit the gas while the nozzle was still attached to her car. Screech! The hose stretched before the breakaway part worked, but not before damaging Karen's gas tank door and the side of her car. The nozzle was torn away and left hanging from her car as she stopped. Coffee spilled all over her front seat and what looked like an expensive leather purse. After a moment of quiet, Karen jumped out of her car yelling. Her earpiece flew off and clattered to the ground, where she immediately stepped on it. Karen asked what happened and said someone must have put the nozzle in her car. She demanded to know who had done this to her and threatened to call the police. The gas station worker ran out and told Karen she left the pump in her car. He was a young guy, probably in college, who looked like he'd already had a long day. Karen said she didn't and someone else must have done it because she wouldn't do that. She pointed at other customers, accusing them of sabotaging her car. The worker told her he watched her pump gas on the security camera and no one else touched her car. He also mentioned this was the third incident like this they'd had this month and asked for her insurance information since there was damage to the pump. Karen started stamping her foot and pointing at people around her. The lottery tickets she had bought were now scattered on the wet pavement. She looked at my wife and asked why she didn't say anything when she saw her sitting there. My wife smiled, started her SUV, and rolled down her window. She told Karen some of us have places to be. Then my wife drove away. She checked that her own gas cap was secure and no nozzles were attached before leaving. When she got home and told me the story, I laughed. The ice cream she had bought was slightly melted from her delay at the gas station, but she said it was worth it. My wife usually helps others, but I guess everyone has limits. The entitled people learn their lessons the hard way. The worker had taken a photo of Karen's license plate, and my wife overheard him saying the repair costs for the pump would be substantial. The gas station is on my wife's regular route, and she'll use a different one for a while. She might feel a bit guilty if she sees the damage again, but not enough to regret what she did. I told her she earned her revenge badge that day. Later that evening, when we were having dinner with my parents, they both agreed Karen had it coming. My dad, who spent 40 years working in customer service, had the best line of the night. Some people spend their whole lives thinking the rules don't apply to them until reality proves otherwise. The bruise on my wife's wrist is already fading, but I have a feeling the memory of Karen's face when that gas hose snapped will last much longer. It was raining that Thursday evening when I had to take an Uber home. My regular bus route was under construction, and with the downpour, walking wasn't an option. I didn't want to spend the extra money, but I had no choice. I've had epilepsy since I was 16. 12 years of medication adjustments, lifestyle changes, and explaining why I don't drive. Most people understand. Some don't. I've grown used to it. When the blue sedan pulled up, I got in the back seat, glad to be out of the rain. The driver greeted me and asked how I was doing. I said I was good and trying to stay dry. I hoped that would end our talk. After a long work day, I just wanted to look out the window and relax. That didn't happen. The driver talked about the rain and how it brought her more rides, which was good for business. I agreed without much interest. I took out my phone, hoping she'd stop talking, but she didn't get the hint. She seemed like someone who hated silence. She asked where I was going and if I was coming from work. I said yes, I was heading home after work. She asked what I did. I told her data entry. Nothing exciting. She said that sounded nice. Stable office work. She mentioned her son wanted to do something with computers too. I nodded, still hoping she'd stop. She didn't. The driver said she needed to pick up her son from band practice after dropping me off. She seemed annoyed he was 16 without a license. I said many people wait longer to get their licenses now. She complained that no one wants to drive anymore. She said her son's friends always ask for rides or take Ubers. She talked about wanting freedom at 16 and going to get her license right away. I went quiet looking at my phone. I'd had this conversation many times before. I felt her looking at me in the mirror. The driver noticed I looked young and asked how long I'd been driving. My stomach tightened. Here we go again. I told her I don't drive. She made a small scoffing sound that bothered me. She asked if I was really in my late 20s and how I got around. I said I use public transit, sometimes Uber when needed. She said that must be so hard and she couldn't imagine not having her car. She asked if I wanted independence. I heard the judgment in her voice, the tone suggesting I was less of an adult for not driving. She asked why I don't drive. Usually, I give vague answers about personal reasons, but something about her tone made me decide to be direct. I told her it was because of epilepsy. I was scared I'd hurt someone, become more disabled, or end up a vegetable. She just said, "Oh." The silence after was sudden and thick. Her eyes stopped checking the mirror and stayed on the road. For 15 minutes, neither of us spoke. Her shoulders were tense, knuckles white on the wheel. Good. Let her feel uncomfortable. When we got near my apartment, she broke the silence. She asked if my building was coming up on the right. I said yes, the blue one with white trim. She pulled up to the curb without looking at me. She told me to have a good evening. I said I wanted to say something before leaving. She finally looked at me in the mirror, clearly nervous. I told her next time someone says they don't drive, she should think they might have a good reason. Not everyone has the same abilities or chances. Some of us are doing our best with what we have. Her face turned red. She started to say she didn't mean to offend. I cut in saying I knew she didn't, and most people don't. But it's tiring having to explain myself to strangers who think not driving means something's wrong with me. She said she was sorry and never thought about it that way. I told her that's the problem. Most people don't until someone makes them. I got my things and opened the door. I said I wouldn't report her or give a bad rating. Everyone learns sometimes, but she should think before judging people when she doesn't know their story. I stepped into the light rain. Before closing the door, I leaned back in. I told her to tell her son there's nothing wrong with not driving at 16 or ever. Some very independent people have never driven. Walking to my building, I noticed her car stayed at the curb longer than needed. Through the mirror, I saw her sitting there thinking. My phone showed the ride was done. She added the note, "Thank you for the perspective. I'm truly sorry." It wasn't much, but it was something. A small win against the entitled attitudes I face daily. Sometimes making someone think is enough. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.